So let's say that you want to sketch or sculpt on the go. Something quick, simple, and light that doesn't feel like an overkill. I've been using the iPad Pro for this kind of stuff, and it is great, but it is also not cheap. And personally, I still struggle to understand how the file system works on Apple. So XPPen sent me their new Magic Drawing Pad to try it out, and I've got to say, this thing really surprised me. If you're an artist looking for a solid, affordable alternative for sketching and sculpting anywhere, this tablet is definitely worth a look. It is lightweight and it feels just like drawing on paper thanks to that matte screen. The battery life is unbelievable, which is a huge plus for when you're on the go. And it runs Android, which fits perfectly with the rest of my setup. Hey, if you're new around here, my name is Pablo. I'm a 3D concept artist and educator, and I help artists level up their skills in the world of 3D, all in a way that is clear, fun, and actually doable. So this video is all about the Magic Drawing Pad from XPPen. So XPPen sent me this really cool tablet. It's a drawing tablet mainly to test it out, but everything that you're gonna hear in this video is my honest opinion. This video is not sponsored by them, even though they sent me this for testing. So I wanna give you my 2 cents, what I think is really good, the not so good, and whether it's worth having it in your toolkit. But overall, it's a fantastic option. I'm gonna walk you through what's in the box, my favorite 2D apps, 3D apps, as well as some workflow tips that I think are really good to make the most out of this tablet. And there's even a comparison between this tablet and the iPad just to give you some context, especially for the 3D apps. Like any new gadget, unboxing this thing was exciting. Inside the main box, you have 2 smaller boxes. The first one, you get a really nice surprise because it includes a tablet case with a built-in pen holder. Super handy stuff. The second box holds the tablet itself, and let me tell you, when you take this out, you'll notice this thing is actually really thin, about 6.9 millimeters. The matte screen finish instantly makes this feel like a premium device, and it definitely helps to reduce the reflection even on the direct light. You also get a compact power adapter, a chunky USB-C cable, and a tiny box with one of those pin tools to eject the micro SD card, which by the way is a great bonus for storage. Not that I'll ever need it because 256 gigabytes is plenty for a mobile device. They also include a drawing glove, which is a really nice touch, but it was a little bit small for me, so it would have been great if I could choose the size, but it has a really nice padding on the palm, which I thought it was cool. Plus, it comes with extra nibs for the pen, a nib puller, and an alternative bottom cap. The pen itself is super light, it feels natural, more like a regular pen than a stylus to be honest, but personally I would have just loved a bit more weight. But again, this is just me being picky. The included case has a soft rubbery finish that fits perfectly fine with the tablet, and the pen holder at the back also adds a little bit of tilt when the tablet is flat on the desk, which I thought it was a really simple but very clever design choice. And setting up this thing took a couple minutes just because I had to log in into the accounts and that sort of thing, but now we can dive right into it. The tablet comes pre-installed with a few apps, including this Ibis Paint X, and at least did for my unit, but it wasn't really for me. I uninstalled it after a few minutes playing around with it just because I didn't really like the UI. I tested a few other apps like Sketch Pro and Medibank Paint, decent features and all, but I couldn't get used to them and they just simply didn't fit my workflow. So now let's go ahead and talk about the apps that I do recommend. First up, we have GoodNotes. Amazing if you just like to take notes or document your process. I use it all the time on the iPad, so it's great to have it here. Next, we have Infinite Painter. It has a clean UI, great brush feel, intuitive tools, and symmetry support. All of that for free. So using this app for sketching in this tablet feels super natural and it's a lot of fun. Then for those 3D artists out there, we have Nomad Sculpt, easily one of my favorite 3D apps on mobile. And because ZBrush is not available on Android, Nomad is my go-to app for 3D stuff, and it runs great here. This concept sculpt has over 2.5 million polygons, and it holds up really well. The tablet uses a Helio G99 processor, which is not necessarily a top-tier processor, but it is surprisingly capable. Another one of those fun stats is that the pen has 16,384 levels of pressure sensitivity, which makes for a very smooth, gradual sculpting or drawing. But honestly, this is a very impressive number, but you won't feel the difference if you had, let's say, 4K levels less. The ultimate test is really about how it feels, and this pen works really great. I feel just like using pen and paper. One small thing that I didn't like though is that in Nomad you need to lift the pen quite a bit just to activate smoothing, which is more like a software quirk than any hardware issue, but something to keep in mind if you're planning to use this app. Also, when I'm testing these kind of devices, I like to push things to the limit, so I cranked up the scene with lighting, reflections, global illumination, depth of field, all the goodies, and it still handled it pretty well. The only thing to do is pause the camera and let it rest up, but the real-time result is great. So for this demo sketch, I created a stylized comic look with a flat shader and a cavity effect to generate the nice outline. And that way I can compare it side by side with what I had in the iPad Pro. Now, when comparing the two devices, the iPad definitely feels snappier, especially when zooming and navigating, but Honestly, unless you compare it directly, you won't really notice it. I actually didn't feel any difference at all until I put them side by side. I also matched the resolution of the sculpt exactly on both devices just for a fair test, and overall, I'm quite impressed on how this tablet handles these tasks. Now let's talk about my drawing experience with this tablet. When I refine my renders, or let's say if I want to sketch something from scratch, I usually go to the Procreate app on the iPad. But I've been using a sketchbook on the Magic Drawing Pad, and I absolutely love it. It's free, it's clean, and honestly, it feels just as fun to use. And I'm gonna keep reiterating this concept. It is a lot of fun. Drawing on this tablet feels natural, the pen doesn't need a battery, which is a plus, and the pressure and responsiveness is excellent. It gives you a lot of control on your line work. And here's the most important thing. This tablet just makes me wanna draw. I keep picking it up just because it's so fun and easy to use. The Sketchbook app also lets you go full screen, and it has a clever minimal UI. I used it here to clean my 3D render with some additional outlines and to add some hatching effect, just to add some extra details. There is only one tiny issue that you might notice as well, which is that the pen is slightly offset, which basically means that the cursor didn't line up perfectly with the pen tip. But fortunately, there is an easy fix. So you just need to go to the settings of the tablet, then go to advanced features, and then handwriting offset. And here you can calibrate it so that the cursor sits right under the pen tip. One thing to keep in mind is that this also has to do with your drawing angle. My offset, for example, was more noticeable because I was trying to keep my head out of this shot. And since we're here in the settings, let me show you some cool tools. That little floating icon that you see here, it's a customizable shortcut wheel. You can drag it anywhere on the screen and just leave it there, and you can assign quick access apps or tools. Here's where I added all my creative apps so I can easily launch them and I can keep my home screen clean. But of course, this is a personal preference, so if you don't like it, you can go ahead and disable it under the stylus settings. By the way, this is also where you can reprogram the pen buttons too. Now, as I've said before, storage-wise, the 256 gigabytes is plenty for me, but it also supports micro SD expansion, so space isn't really an issue. And if you're like me and use something like Google Drive or similar, it is even easier to offload the files. One extra thing to watch out for is the NXT Vision. It is actually a very cool setting that boosts color and contrast, which in general makes the colors pop and everything that you do in this tablet looks very vibrant, but it can throw off your art when you move the artwork or the file to other devices. I would just recommend disabling it just to get more accurate colors. To do that, go to the settings, NXT Vision, and turn off image enhancement. The rest can stay the same. And here's something fun. This new model actually does support the pen tilt up to 60 degrees, right? So it can detect the angle on how the stylus is held. I originally thought that the lack of tilt would be a deal breaker for me because I do use it, but it turns out it's not missing at all. So you can get a bunch of different stroke shapes just changing your angle, vertical, 45 degree, or anything between that 60 degree range. And to be honest, the response of this effect is actually pretty nice. Very, very clever. I also want to mention a couple more things that are very, very impressive. The battery life in this thing, as I mentioned before, is absolutely incredible, even after hours of working non-stop, which I think is one of the biggest pros for this tablet. And since it's marketed as a mobile sketching drawing tool, having a good battery life is one of those features that are indispensable. The second really cool thing is the combination of brightness and the nice matte finish for the screen. This basically allows you to work outside, even in a bright sunny day, without being annoyed by the reflections. So this is another really nice thing to have. Although, to be honest, working with Noman in a dark background made it a little bit more tricky to see things. Now, here are some apps that I think are worth mentioning as well. So the first one is Krita. I absolutely love the desktop version, so I was really excited to work with this on a tablet. But it turns out that the mobile UI just isn't there. It feels more like a direct port from a PC, which can get a little bit frustrating with pop-ups and tool windows. The next app worth mentioning if you want to try it is Clip Studio Paint. It works better than Krita on mobile, but it still feels like a desktop app that is being jammed into a tablet. I did it a good go for testing different things, and I found it good for thumbnails, but maybe not for a full workflow. Again, just a personal preference. And the third one is High Paint. Now, this one is really, really cool. It has a clean UI, lots of different tools, and it includes a very similar brush to one of my favorite tools in Krita, the Leaf brush. This is a brush that basically acts as a paint lasso, and I think it's a great tool to quickly generate thumbnails, block out composition, practice controls, and in general, just sketching things out. All right, and to wrap this up, I want to give you some extra workflow tips, especially for the Sketchbook app. So in full screen mode, you get this nice, sleek floating UI. The top circle controls the brush opacity and the size. So you can basically slide up and down with your finger or your pen to change the opacity and go left and right to adjust the brush size. The bottom circle is your color picker, but you can also tap and hold anywhere in the screen to choose a color. And there's also a smart toggle on the left-hand side with a quick access to things like brushes, layers, and of course colors. Just tap and drag up or down to access a quick palette for the most used tools. And once you get used to this UI, it is a fast, clean, and a super enjoyable way to sketch and draw on this tablet. Oh, and before I forget, here is something really neat about the pen. Not only you can customize the type of buttons you have on the pen, but you can actually use the pen to keep your spare nibs. At the back end, you can unscrew the gray bead to reveal 4 nib holders inside. A very tiny, small detail, but a really cool design. So if you have been looking for a solid and affordable tablet to support your creative workflow on the go, this tablet is a brilliant option. Most of the downsides that I found with this tablet are pretty minor and there are easy workarounds. For instance, the offset of the pen, you can change that from the settings. There's other things that are more about the apps than the actual device. So there are limitations with the apps themselves, like Krita, that is kind of like ported from the desktop or from the PC into the tablet, so it doesn't work as well. But the device itself is fantastic. Remember, this is a full-on Android tablet, so you can use it to send emails, go into meetings, take notes, not just for drawing or sketching on the go. So I hope that you find this review useful. Let me know in the comments if you want me to dive deeper into an area of this tablet or a specific app that you might want a tutorial on. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.